Hey everybody, Todd Basil here, and welcome to another episode of 2-Minute Tech Law Tips, digestible bites for tech companies and investors. So we talked about patent strategy for the past couple episodes. Now we're going to pivot to one of my favorite topics, software licensing. Now, just about every company out there today licenses software from somebody else, and most tend to do it on a subscription basis. Now, what does that mean? It means, hey, rather than purchasing and downloading that software onto your computer and running it from there, you're instead going to pay for a subscription to access that software, most of the time through your internet browser with a username and password. So with that background in mind, we're going to dive right into one of the key considerations companies should have in mind when subscribing to software services, and that is making sure you can maintain business continuity. So if you think about it, under a subscription model, you're often entrusting vital business operations to a third-party software provider. And if that provider does not perform, that can hurt your business operations as well as jeopardize the commitments that you've made to your customers. Thus, it's very important to have contingency plans as well as exit ramps in place should things start to go sideways. So what are some ways that savvy subscribers can go about mitigating business continuity risk? Well, one way is to ensure that software provider has adequate disaster recovery protocols in place. Things like backups, storing those backups in a remote location so that a fire doesn't take everything out, and other things like that. Now, another way to mitigate business continuity risk is to include a service level warranty in your subscription agreement. Now, as you can imagine, when software is provided over the internet, there's potential for outages, lag, and other issues that could affect your ability to access and use that software. So in an effort to minimize that disruption, you might require that the software is guaranteed to be up and running and accessible for a certain percentage of the time. Otherwise, maybe you get a credit back, or if it's a persistent problem, maybe you have an exit ramp built in that allows you to terminate the agreement and move on to another vendor who can do a better job. Now, a third way you might go about mitigating business continuity risk is to require transition services in your agreement. When you part ways with a software vendor, it's generally a good idea to have a commitment from them to assist you with that process. We're talking things like pulling out your data, your reports, and other work product, and helping get that moved over to your new vendor. Now, as you can imagine, without that assistance, it could be a very frustrating and disruptive process. And in fact, we're actually going to discuss that in more depth here in an upcoming video. And a fourth way you might mitigate business continuity risk include source code escrow provisions in your agreement. Now, typically these protect you, the subscriber, in the event that the software vendor goes bankrupt or otherwise can't continue to offer that software. Now, essentially what source code escrow does is allows you to get a copy of that software and use it yourself going forward, independent of that software provider. Source code escrow can be a very touchy topic for obvious reasons, and there could actually be some downsides too for subscribers that they should keep in mind. Essentially, you want to ask yourself, hey, if I get this copy of the source code, am I sophisticated enough? Do I have the knowledge and the resources to actually get this thing up and running and do so quickly so that I don't really incur much in the way of business interruption? If the answer to that question is no, you might consider alternatives to source code escrow, such as escrow as a service, which is a relatively new thing. What they do is they go out and preserve the entire operating environment. So you don't have to figure out, hey, how do I compile this stuff? Hey, how do I tie it in with different databases and all those other things that are necessary for it to function correctly. So that will wrap up our discussion on the importance of maintaining business continuity when subscribing to software services. Stay tuned for more tips on subscription licensing in upcoming videos. And until then, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you soon.